Okay, experiment is underway. The first book I'm going to choose is On the Heavenly Spheres. I don't know what it'll be like to read it, like textbooky type thing out loud, but we're going to go for it and see. Maybe discuss things along the way as I'm thinking through things. But here we go. This book, it's a treatise on traditional astrology, and it's written by Helena Avalar and Luis Ribeiro. Hopefully I pronounced that okay. Um, yeah. So let's go. Chapter 1, Astrology. The world is in a constant state of change. Some changes are natural and expected because everything on earth is born, matures, and dies. Other changes are sudden and unexpected, reminding us that we live in an imperfect world where chaos and pain can arise at any moment. Only the immense heavens persist immutably in our eyes, and consequently become symbols of perpetual perfection. Nevertheless, it's still possible to perceive motion even within the immutable heavens, the rising and setting of the sun, the phases of the moon, the movements of the planets. As the macro is a measure of the micro, the motion of the heavens produces effects on Earth. The tides, the passage of seasons, the changes in climate. Understanding this heavenly motion and its effects upon earthly events has always been a goal for man. For centuries, dedicated sky watchers scrutinized the skies in search of patterns and cycles. Night after night, they studied the subtleties of planetary motion with attentive eyes. Equal attention was given to terrestrial events in an attempt to find correlations in them. In time, this effort produced fruits and allowed for the deduction of the laws that link stellar motion to worldly events. Thus, mankind's discovered the key to astrology. Many hours have been dedicated to the study and cataloging of these laws. Many scholars have dedicated their lives to the study of this knowledge, and many civilizations have contributed to its development. This endeavor has always been colored by a profound sense of reverence at the grandiosity of celestial order. In this way, astrological thought becomes the cornerstone that explains the universe and its meaning. This knowledge deepened and grew, producing a set of consistent principles and techniques possessing great precision and efficacy. These structures make up the astrological system that has reached us via the tradition. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is the heavens in motion. The sun, moon, and planets are the only bodies we see moving in the heavens. Each night, their movements change the appearance of the sky. Every day, the sun sets at a different place from the night before, and every night, the moon waxes and wanes, and the planets shift ever so slightly. Because of this mobility, which contrasts with the apparent stillness of the stars, these bodies become grand icons of change. It is these movable pieces that make up the astrological system, that make the astrological system a dynamic one. Incidentally, this system was conceived of in order to predict and interpret these same movements. In addition to their motion in relation to the fixed stars, the planets also participate in the grand rotation that drags the firmament along with all the stars. From sunrise to sunset to sunrise again in the space of a day. In order to study the movement of the planets in relation to the sky, we use a system of celestial coordinates, the zodiac, and its 12 divisions, the signs. The movement in relation to the horizon is measured by a system of terrestrial coordinates, the astrological houses, which divide the sky into segments projected from the horizon. Thus, the movements of the planets are measured and qualified in accordance with their position within these two coordinate systems. In other words, we measure the position of the planets in their houses and signs. Each sign and house has its own specific meaning, which is combined with the meaning of the planet in order to generate the nexus of an astrological interpretation. These meanings can be applied in the description of any type of event, personal or collective. In this manner, astrology constitutes a system that describes terrestrial reality by means of celestial movements. Next little headline is called Prediction. A natural outgrowth of this system is the concept of prediction. If it is possible to interpret celestial motion to describe the present, then logically it is also possible to foresee future celestial movements from these to describe a future reality. In a similar manner, it is equally possible to know the past movements of celestial bodies and, as a consequence, to describe the past reality. Astrology thus describes the reality of the present, past, and future by means of the movements of the celestial bodies and their relationship to Earth. Applied initially to natural phenomena and then later to political and individual events, prediction has always been a chief goal of astrology. We're going to go into the branches of astrology. Astrological knowledge has become specialized into various branches that are defined by subject. There are 4 principal branches. We have mundane astrology, natal astrology, horary astrology, and electional astrology. As the name implies, mundane astrology studies the mundane world. This branch examines subjects such as civilizations, human trends, politics, economics, wars, social movements, etc. Essentially, all of the phenomena affecting humanity as a collective. On the other hand, this branch of astrology is also concerned with natural phenomena such as earthquakes, storms, and droughts, and is also known as natural astrology. Technically, mundane astrology interprets the charts produced by annual ingresses, the beginning of the 4 seasons of the year, the chart of eclipses, and other relevant celestial phenomena, for example, comets, as well as the chart of nations and their governments. Natal astrology concerns itself with nativities or birth charts. Its subject of study is the human being, behaviors, capacities, and challenges, social relationships, and destiny. The principal tool of natal astrology is the natal chart, or the astrological chart, from the moment of birth of the individual. Natal astrology, nope. Next paragraph. Horary astrology is the most divinatory of all the branches because it purports to give answers to specific questions by interpreting the chart of the moment, for the moment the question was formulated. Because of the pivotal importance it gives to the astrological moment, the moment of now, that is, to the question's hour, it is called horary. Horary. This branch concerns itself with all types of questions: jobs, promotions, buying and selling of goods and property, the future of relationships, legal questions, the whereabouts of lost objects and people, etc. Its primary tool is the astrological chart erected for the moment when the question was posed to the astrologer. The astrologer then applies specific interpretive techniques to answer the question. Astrological elections were used to elect the astrological moment most appropriate to initiate an action. They allow for the selection of the right moment to, for example, begin the construction of a building, launch a business, send a message, or schedule a wedding. Whereas mundane, natal, and horary charts are interpreted in order to understand the condition of a nation, individual, or question. In an election, we try to construct the appropriate chart for the desired results. There are also specialties in astrology that combine the tools of the different branches with the goal of understanding, diagnosing, and curing illness. Medical astrology is the most representative of these specializations. The specialty relies on horary and natal techniques in order to diagnose a patient. Electional astrology to determine the best moment to initiate or administer a treatment, and more pointedly, on mundane in order to understand the larger social context of a particular disease. The rules of astrology are common to all branches, The difference in interpretation comes from the context that is applied to the significations of the planets, houses, and signs. Additionally, each branch also contains its own set of techniques that are particular to its study. Okay, we're going to go into the astrological types. It is important to understand the difference between an astrological branch and an astrological type. As discussed above, an astrological branch are distinguished by the particular focus, whereas an astrological type results from the integration of a philosophy or creed into the practice of astrology. Thus, instead of one astrology, there's a proliferation of multiple variations of astrology, some more coherent and valid than others. We therefore have, for example, psychological, humanistic, holistic, karmic, esoteric, and experimental astrologies. In most cases, the differences are more apparent than real. In reality, despite their beguiling names, many of these variants are very similar, diverging only in the name and the personal creed of each astrologer. The techniques and methods employed are usually the same. Additionally, the majority of these approaches limit their study to natal astrology and make few incursions into other branches. Most of these variants appeal to the supposed esoteric or spiritual understanding of the natal chart, alleging that traditional astrology is purely materialistic. This, of course, is absurd. It's absurd. As those who study the tradition can readily attest, astrology rests upon metaphysical principles that encompass all facets of the life of a human being, including, naturally, spirituality. From another perspective, there exist approaches that are considered astrological in content, but which diverge considerably in technical terms from the nucleus of traditional astrology. Among these, we find the cosmobiology school developed by German astrologer Reinhold Eberton, whose birth date is 1901 to 1988, whose technical principles are for the most part different from those of traditional astrology and use the mathematical relationships between the planets, for example, distant proportions, as a basis for interpretation. Also of note are Uranian astrology, created by German astrologer Alfred White, 1878 to 1941, which uses 8 hypothetical planets, and the Huber method, created by Swiss couple Louis, born 1924, and Bruno Huber, 1930 to 1999. The latter is more similar to traditional practice, but relies on its own interpretive techniques, geometric figures, colors, etc. Okay, I am going to shut this one down here and then do the brief history of astrology in a separate video.